Woo! You know it. The excellence in podcast execution, baby, is right here for you. It's the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for a little Patreon special, baby. A little, I'll tell you, I get a little worried sometimes, because what happens if Patreon completely crashes at some point, and yet I keep saying these are all Patreon specials. Should I give it another name? But whatever. People will know what I'm talking about if they listen to it into posterity, and I always have a backup plan ready for the shit. But regardless, this is something that I promised, and I like to keep my promises personally, that I said I would do. I said, on this week's Q&A, of course, today is February 2nd, 12,017. HE, baby, the Holocene era, or the human era, depending on which way you want to go about it. But I said, on this week's Q&A, I said, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to a certain review of a particular movie, but if I don't, I'll just record a separate episode, 15, 30 minutes, whatever, to talk about it. Of course, you get me talking and shit, it's a miracle of Satan if I can do it, if I can stop after 15 or 30 minutes. Regardless, this is that review episode, and what I'm reviewing is a movie that just came out this January of 2017, that being Justice League Dark. Now, this is part of the animated movie universe, effectively, of DC. If you didn't get that already by the name Justice League. So now the animated movies for DC, I've never gotten a real, let's be clear on this. All right, first off is that while the DC universe, and I kind of mentioned this on the Q&A this week, on the Patreon Q&A, the DC universe, the live action universe is kind of a mess right now. Flash is constantly going through rewrites, losing team members and all this. Ben Affleck's not directing Batman anymore, and people are, freaking out about that, which it's a shock. It's still a shock to me that Affleck actually, or Batfleck, whatever you want to call him, that Ben Affleck actually worked really well as Batman. I'm still kind of impressed by that fact alone. But and I think I said a lot of this in the Q&A, but just to reiterate quickly, I recognize that the joined DC live action universe as it exists right now is really a mess. Man of Steel is really the only great movie in it right now, in my opinion. Even though I liked the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman, I really liked the Ultimate Edition of that. I thought there was a lot to enjoy there, a lot of moments that make it worthwhile, to exist and watch. Suicide Squad, whatever. Wonder Woman, I think, is going to be very exciting. I've never really been one for the Flash. I get the character, I've read Wally West for years, or even, Barry Allen, depending upon which Flash we were talking about, or even when, Impulse came around, Kid Impulse and all that. But I never got it. So whatever, that movie doesn't excite me, nor do any of the TV shows. But that's another area really where I guess DC is shining, and I don't really watch it. I don't think I've really watched a comic book show, not heavily. I've checked stuff out just to see what it's, what's going on. I haven't watched a comic book TV show probably since Smallville. And I really liked Smallville. At least the first few seasons, I really enjoyed the fuck out of those. I think it's one of the best shows. The way they handled Superman was just phenomenal. My beef with Smallville, though, later on, was that even though I liked that he was wearing triple black for a while, go Superman, go, woo, I didn't like that we knew that he would never, that he would never put on the tights. And it's just well, then what the fuck's the point? I get it. It's an origin story, but let's do it. At least at the end, give us one time. All right. Let Tom Welling do his thing, because Tom Welling had a great look. Just tremendous. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. We're here to talk about Justice League Dark. But I guess right now, that on the CW and everything in the TV universe of DC's doing really well. People are loving this, Legends of Tomorrow. Arrow is kind of up and down. I guess the first couple seasons of that were some of the best television ever made, and then suddenly it went off the rails. Supergirl is kind of picking up stride. Everybody loves the Flash. So there's just because DC's not mimicking Marvel. This is my point. Just because DC's not mimicking Marvel's success in theaters doesn't mean that DC's not putting out great, motion, I don't know, what do you want to, not cinematic, video content. How about that? Because there's still compared to what Marvel's doing in comic books, as to what DC's doing in comic books, like with the Rebirth thing and everything. I mean, DC, while not my favorite comic book company right now, is wiping the floor with Marvel. Of course, I dare say that other than maybe the 90s, maybe the late 90s, that DC has always wiped the floor with Marvel as far as comic book, the actual comics themselves, not any extraneous material goes. Now, I've talked about this. I did, if you're a new patron, I did what's called my Sovereign Top 8s, where I pick a certain subject, genre, whatever, and I do like the top 8 out of it. It could be like, I've done heavy metal, top 8s. I've done movie top 8s, book top 8s, Star Trek. I've done all this shit, right? And recently I've been doing a series of comic book top 8s. And largely I've stuck within the comic books themselves, not the, not the extraneous material like movies, animated shows, and things of this nature. So, but if we were to talk, just to break this down, if we were to talk about who's doing the best animated movies, and I've said this for years, it easily goes to DC. It's not... I think you could make an argument. I mean, if you were wanting to compare like all of the DC movies, and I don't just mean the DC like universe, like the kind of the continuous universe that they're trying to create right now with Justice League, Man of Steel, Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, and all that. If you count all of the DC movies and compare them to all of the Marvel movies, live action we're talking about, not animated, DC actually wins that battle. I mean, 79 Superman, 89 Batman, right? The Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. I mean, some of these movies are the biggest of all time and the most influential, the most game-changing, the most powerful movies that have ever been made. And they're all DC. Now, they're not part of some kind of like joint universe like Marvel does, which is, an impressive feat on Marvel's part. I won't take that away from it. But I mean, the best movie Marvel's got, what, Iron Man? Like the first Iron Man movie, and some people really like Civil War, even though I don't think Captain America was a star there. I think Black Panther like just stole the show with that movie along with some others. But regardless, I mean, if you break it, if you look at it as a gigantic cohesive whole, DC still just tears apart what Marvel does as a whole. Again, including the entire, not the canon, but the entire, the entirety of what these companies have produced over the decades. DC, I think, just tops them. But anyway, the area where I think it's always been super clear that they do, even though Marvel has had some hits in this realm, that being animated, and the hits being like, the 92 X-Men, and maybe like the 90s Spider-Man show and the Iron Man show and Silver Surfer. In the 90s, Marvel was putting out some pretty good cartoons, actually. But I mean, they didn't match the juggernaut that was Batman, the animated series, of course. I mean, what does? To me, the only one that actually compared, and personally I think better, even though I know not everybody agreed with that, was Superman, the animated series. So anyway, after all of those animated series kind of came to an end, DC got into this bit of business where they started releasing, and they really picked up stride when New 52 started in 2011. But they started, so, that's been 6 years. They started, like releasing this sort of like, I've never gotten a clear answer whether or not they're all actually, this is what I was saying earlier, that they're like joint, like that one movie is attached to the other. Some of them clearly aren't. Like New Frontier, Justice League New Frontier is obviously not connected to, like, say, Superman Shazam or Superman Batman Doomsday. Like those aren't related, but you get the same voice actors in a lot of these movies though. And you have, similar cues as far as, outfits and all this, right? Because, Wonder Woman looks the same and all that, and you have the same voice actress and everything. And so Justice League Dark kind of fits in with that New 52 bit of business. Now, Justice League Dark, for those that don't know, this is an idea, kind of a newer idea in DC, in the comic books. It was a comic book first, and it was actually part of New 52, where it had to do with like the magical and the supernatural. And it was a good, when it was running, I thought it was an enjoyable comic. Like I really liked it. In fact, one of the first things I'm going to say about this movie, this 2017 animated film, that being Justice League Dark, the big omission from it for me was the Phantom Stranger not being there. Phantom Stranger is one of the most underutilized, enigmatic characters that DC has. Okay. And you get a bunch of different stories as to what exactly the Phantom Stranger's origin story is. And it'd be such a good origin story to do. Maybe they're saving it for his own little animated film, which they could certainly do. But in the comic book, Phantom Stranger was a part of Justice League Dark. And, as to where in the movie, Justice League Dark is pretty much, it's Constantine, Zatanna, Deadman, Batman ends up being in this. You get some cameos from other Justice League members, and of course, Jason Blood, who will take the form of the Demon here and there. And they are taking on, well, there's a couple different characters. At first, it seems like they're going after Faust. And then you find out that they're actually going after Destiny. So yeah, spoiler alerts, folks. This is going to be you can, if you read the back of the fucking Blu-ray, you get what I just told you. But just so you know, there's going to be spoilers here. So there you go, spoiler alert. Anyway, overall, I'll just say this, and I want to break down more into it. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. It's not the best animated DC movie that's come out in the past 6 years. But it was good. It was, definitely worthwhile. It comes in an hour and 15 minutes. And it's a very enjoyable hour and 15 minutes. And there's parts of it that were laugh out loud funny. I was genuinely laughing my ass off at some of the jokes. And that's one of the beauties of the DC animated movie universe, is that they are not afraid to make very adult jokes. Very adult jokes. Like in one of the Batman, I think it was Batman, Superman, Apocalypse. I think that was the movie where they crack jokes about Power Girl's tits. And I just, it's been a long standing thing in the comic books. It was great to finally get it there and for it to be so overt. Just fantastic. So yeah, this did not disappoint on that end. So being directed by Jay Oliva, Jay Oliva is a guy that has been doing great work for a long time. He's been a storyboard artist forever. And you got to understand, when people direct, I know some people are like, how do you direct an animated movie? Oh, you do. Just like with video games, you can direct video games because you're saying, okay, no, have the character do this, have them face this way, and all this shit. And Jay Oliva's just done, he's been doing things that I've been watching for so fucking long. He did Extreme Ghostbusters back in 97, which was actually pretty good. Wasn't as good as the real Ghostbusters, but it wasn't half bad either. He did Roughnecks. That was the Starship Troopers 3D animated show that was really good. He did, in fact, one of my favorite, he worked on one of my favorite animated series of all time. And this goes true for any of its incarnations, but in particular, this one was just top notch. And that was the 2002 reboot of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. If you're laughing, stop, because go watch that shit. That was great. Great fucking animation. Great artistry for one. It was Japanese level artistry. This was high fucking quality. I'm still baffled as to how that show got canned. I don't know. It went 2 seasons. It was great. And the ratings, I remember when it was coming on. I remember exactly where I was. I was jazzed up. I was ready to go. Oh yeah, He-Man's back. This is going to be fucking great. So he's done work on that. And then eventually he ended up, in fact, interestingly, and maybe this, I don't know exactly what this says, but Jay Oliva, he said he had done, so for a little while there, I think when DC was actually doing really, really good sales numbers and good critic ratings with their animated movies that they started, like I said, a few years ago, Marvel tried to kind of cash in on that thing too. They did, let's see. They did an Iron Man animated movie. They did a Doctor Strange one. This is long before, well, not long before, but this is certainly long before they were ever thinking of having, a Benedict Cumberbatch led Doctor Strange movie. And I think maybe the best one that Marvel did as far as these animated films was probably Planet Hulk, which is a great storyline. So anyway, he actually worked on the Invincible Iron Man movie and on that Doctor Strange film. And those were, I remember watching those. They weren't bad. They weren't great. They weren't at the level like a lot of these DC animated movies are, but they were pretty good. So it's interesting that now here he is on board, with the DC movies. And I think he started off actually with Superman Doomsday. He started working on the DC animated films. So good for him to jump in on this. and be, kind of on top, because I don't know. I mean, DC does a good job of promoting these movies, but I mean, this is definitely not one of their, obviously it's not one of their bigger ones. But Jay Oliva is, just a fantastic person to have on board, for doing any of that, really. So, so as far as the, okay, we got that out of the way, who directed it and it looked good. It worked. Kind of the first thing that stood out to me with this movie, outside of like that, I was like, okay, cool. Jay Oliva's doing it. All right. This should be all right. Was really the score, the soundtrack. Robert J. Kral, I'm not exactly sure what other things he's done, but he did this great mixture of kind of a dubstep and orchestral score. And I thought he did great work. Like right from the opening credits, I was like, wow, this is really a unique style for DC animated movies. And I thought that was fantastic. So, I mean, the soundtrack right out of the gate, and I pay attention to soundtrack, even in animated films, it's important. I actually looked to see if this was available, if the soundtrack was available with La La Land Records, because La La Land Records, I think it's lalalandrecords.com. Has nothing to do with the movie La La Land, which was great, by the way. But they have kind of an exclusive deal with DC, to where they release a lot of the soundtracks for the animated movies and all this, usually in very limited runs. Almost everything La La Land comes out with usually has a limited run of anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000, something like that. I regularly frequent La La Land Records for some rarities, like talk about a great DC animated movie, Return of the Caped Crusaders. Holy fucking shit. You better believe I got my hands on the soundtrack for that. And oh, did I. And it's just a stunner. But anyway, I didn't see the soundtrack for this release yet, which that kind of plays to the point that this doesn't seem to have been a huge push for DC, even though, I mean, not that they didn't not market it, but it's not as big a deal perhaps as some of their other movies. Soundtrack was good. Again, the animation direction was rock solid. All that was fine. Of course, the voice acting, across the board, was really, really good. In fact, including, you got to give props, because this is a really tough set of shoes to fill. But Jason O'Mara, who has been voicing Batman for a while now in a lot of these movies and even some TV work. I mean, to fill the shoes, I mean, you got some great voice talent that has worked, done the work for Batman, and he does it. I think he pulls it off with aplomb. So kudos to him. Camille Luddington did a great job as Zatanna, which that's sort of tough character, I think, to voice, because, she's got a very, very strange, kind of very specific attitude that the comics always sort of deliver. I don't really care for, speaking of Zatanna, one of the main characters in this, one of the main members of Justice League Dark. They never officially label it Justice League Dark. They just kind of give it that's sort of the name for it, or for the movie, pretty much. And it was the title for the comic book, but anyway, Zatanna's been, a personal favorite character of mine. First off, because I think the outfit she normally has, that she's had historically, where it's kind of this magician's outfit with like the fishnet stockings and everything, I think is sexy as hell. They dumped that in this, and they went with like a corset and I don't know, like leather pants or something. And like a lot of things that DC did as far as revamping outfits, some things they did to make more sense, like getting rid of Superman's, underwear on the outside and all this shit, right? Which is true in this movie as well, and which has stuck even into the Rebirth event for DC Comics now. I get it that they were like with Wonder Woman, they're trying to make the outfits like less kind of sexualized to a degree. I understand that. I disagree with it. And then that's a whole other rant, and it has nothing to do with debasing women whatsoever. But that's a whole other rant that I've made in past Q&A episodes. If you really want to know which ones, ask me, and I'll find which one it was. It was one of the first ones, one of the first Q&As, like one of the first few I remember. But I don't remember the exact episode. But I talked about that exact topic, like why do characters, why do these male and female characters have like such pronounced features? Like why do the female characters have gigantic breasts? It's not just because of like some male oogling. I'm not saying that doesn't become a part of it at certain points, but the reason that started is very different. A lot of it has to do with identification on a very small art pane. But that's as far as I'm going to go on that subject. Anyway, so Zatanna's new look, didn't do anything for me, but whatever, it's fine. So the movie, now, another place I have to give this film credit, and kudos to Jay Oliva for letting a lot of this, really go and do it, is that, I mean, this is a genuinely dark film. Like, the name fits. It opens up with, like, this family, what's happening is that normal people in a city are experiencing, like, it's almost like, if you remember the movie, was it Dark Knight? Batman Begins. In Batman Begins, how, like, the Scarecrow kind of, releases this gas and makes everybody see all these demons and all this shit. That seems to be something along those lines. It's not the Scarecrow and it's not gas, it seems to be what's happening to a lot of people, kind of around the world. And there's a scene where this guy is in his house and he's pointing a gun at his family, his children and his wife, and it's very obvious that that's what he's doing, and he's about ready to shoot them. And, like, when you see through his eyes, they all look like demons. But then, when Batman shows up, or maybe it wasn't Batman that showed up. It was Wonder Woman maybe that showed up, or Superman. I think it was, yeah. Anyway, when they showed up, you see that, no, actually everybody there is totally normal. This guy, there's something wrong with him. And then they go to the shed, because the guy's saying, as the police are arresting him, he says, it's like the same thing happened to my family that happened to the neighbors. And they go into the shed and the neighbors are all cut in pieces and hanging and everything. I mean, this is an animated movie, but it's as adult as it gets. So I'll give them credit. It was really, really dark. And then there was kind of a powerful moment that I think you've got to have that kind of attachment with the characters to really get just how powerful this was. There's a woman who she thinks her baby is a demon. Okay. And again, you don't know exactly what's going on, but just that these people are kind of hallucinating that other people in their lives are some kind of monster. This woman and so she's standing on a ledge in the city, on a skyscraper effectively, or on a building, and she's getting ready to throw her baby over. Because she thinks it's evil, like it's Satan's child, like it's a Rosemary's Baby situation or something, right? And so she goes to toss the baby. Batman swoops in, Batman's there first saying, look, you don't have to do this. Your baby's fine, whatever. But she tosses the baby. Batman swoops down and saves the baby, but the mother jumps. Maybe because she realized what she did or whatever. She's feeling regret. And you see her there. She's dead on the pavement, and the power of the moment is that Batman swoops onto kind of a perch, a ledge of sorts, holding the baby. This baby is now an orphan, much like Batman himself was, or is. And, like, I think that kind of the power of that moment and why Batman is, gets so quickly involved and is so willing to work with such a, what would be, coined a rogues gallery of heroes, quote unquote heroes, like Constantine, Zatanna, Deadman, Estrigan, and all that. That's why, because it doesn't show it in the animation, but if you know the character, you get the hint that, he's reliving some trauma. So I thought it was very subtle. It was kind of quick, but if you know the character, you get it. Like if you're knee deep in this stuff, you understand what exactly happened there. So I thought that was really cool. It's terrible, but for the movie, like it was a very, very nice touch. And again, getting away from the darkness. So again, very dark movie, like tons and tons of dark shit going on in this film. The humor though was so good. It was so funny. Like, we're talking about a bunch of different characters that are really big on magic, like, John Constantine and Zatanna and Deadman and all that. And they're sort of cracking this joke about David Copperfield. And everybody's like, what are you serious? David Copperfield doesn't have any magic. It's like, are you saying he has magic? And Constantine just like cracks this joke saying, something like, well, he owns a chain of islands and he got to date Claudia Schiffer. What do you think? That was so good. And then there was, when they first introduced Zatanna, she's doing kind of like this wild magic show. I think it was in Gotham, and Batman, goes to meet her backstage and says, I hope the elephants are all right. You don't want PETA on your back. It was funny. I thought that was really funny. And then actually in that same scene, Deadman ends up taking over. Was it Boston Braddock? Is that his name? Anyway, Deadman, who is this kind of like spirit character who was he was like a trapeze act, kind of a circus act kind of guy, real daredevil, in not in the comic book sense, but a daredevil in the real world sense, and who ends up like he gets separated from his body because he was a womanizer effectively, and one of the woman's husbands ends up shooting him. They did a great job with Deadman's origin story. Like they kept it right up to where it's Ramakrishna is the one that gives him like allows him to live and try and get revenge on what happened to him and all this stuff. Like that was, I got to give him credit. They stuck with a very dark origin story for Deadman, and they did it. And Deadman was funny too. Like they did really well with that. And I like how there's a point where he tries to inhabit Batman's body and he has a hard time. And he even says, he's like, wow, this guy's mind is just too tough. I can't control him. And I thought that was a nice touch, to give Batman kind of his full due, his full props. When they go to, Constantine, who's kind of the main character in all this. Constantine and Zatanna are supposed to be kind of the headliners. Batman, I think, is in it just to get your regular viewer to start viewing. Okay, because everybody knows Batman, even if you don't know all these other little characters, even though Constantine's kind of sort of been a fairly popular dark character for a while for DC. But Constantine has his House of Mystery, which is a really cool aspect of the character, where it's this mansion that can just appear wherever he wants it to. And it's full of all this magic shit and everything. But there's a great point where one of Constantine's people is, reading everybody and what they're all about. It's just, it's a common trick to try and introduce everybody by having sort of a mind reader explain what they detect from the characters. And the Constantine's, person just, it's kind of like, you exude pain. You're, talking about Batman. You exude pain. Your life is a patchwork of blackness with no time for joy. How do you cope with it? And Batman just says, I have a butler. Like I said, I was dying laughing through. I can't deliver these lines the way they do. It's so good. And then you end up with Swamp Thing ends up joining in as well. I gotta admit, I would have loved it if they had Lee Majors voice Swamp Thing. A lot of people may not remember, but in the early 90s, maybe it was late 80s, early 90s, there was a Swamp Thing TV show. Swamp Thing, the defender of the green, of all that is green, right? Kind of an eco hero. And Lee Majors played Swamp Thing. Lee Majors is still alive. I would have loved it if they could have gotten him to voice Swamp Thing again. They didn't, but whatever. I would have enjoyed it. Of course, Lee Majors, most people know as the $6 Million Man, or the show that I knew him even better for, which was The Fall Guy. Well, how did the Fall Guy theme go? Oh, I love it with Heather Thomas. Woo! I never spent much time in school, but I taught ladies plenty. I love the Fall Guy. Oh, man. All right. Sorry. Getting lost in revelry there. So, yeah, Swamp Thing was there. He kind of plays a bigger part, and that was cool to have that character, end up in it. And, the movie kind of tricks you. And I got to give them credit for doing this, because when you get to what you think in the film is the main bad guy, is the main villain, which is Faust, this magician that's been around for a while, kind of based off of Dr. Faustus, right? You sort of feel like, wait, if this is the end battle, this is fucking cheap. Like, what do you need this whole team? What do you need Batman for to handle this guy? But you very much get the sense they start pulling out all the big guns. Like Zatanna starts going into her dark place and starts speaking and backmasking and everything. And, so you get every sense that, yeah, this is the end, but you're just like, this villain's not enough. Like this isn't worthy of what the hell this movie's trying to parlay. Of course, you find out that really the main villain's supposed to be Destiny and not Faust. But it was clever of them to do that they really made you believe, nope, this is the main heavy. This is the guy that's got to get taken down. And, even though you get nothing of the villain. Like, I mean, you really have no understanding, like, what exactly did this guy do? Of course, you know, before they end up killing Faust, which they don't, but before they could, he gets away with saying, well, you know, what did I do? It's like, why are you guys messing with me? So that was good. I mean, you credit to them for really pulling the wool, you know, pulling a magician's act there, pulling the wool over the eyes of making you think that Faust was going to be kind of the, you know, the main bad guy here. But it ends up not being that. So, and then you end up with the battle with Destiny, and Destiny starts doing all of the, you know, kind of the tricks on people. And I mean, it gets nuts to where the cops start shooting civilians, you know, because they think the civilians are all demons and everything, which, well, there might be a lot of truth to maybe that's how cops think, but well, but anyway, I mean, again, dark movie, definitely shit going on that maybe is not for the kids. But that's good. I mean, none of these DC animated movies are ever really made for kids. These particular DC animated movies that are made with sort of the New 52 vein, and even the ones that necessarily aren't, are really not made for children. I mean, they're made for like everybody possible, and particularly adults. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think that about covers kind of the highlights of the whole thing. I thought it was good. Not great. It wasn't up to the level of like Superman, Batman, Apocalypse, or Red Hood, or like Superman Doomsday was really good. Even Superman Shazam was really good. It wasn't at that level. I did like, there were points where, well, there's a point where the kind of the Justice League Dark, even though again, that's not like an official name of theirs, have to take on the Justice League in it. And sort of the ways that they battle, like literally they have to fight Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and all that was really, really clever. Like it was very, that part of the battle alone, even not taking on Destiny, that part of the battle alone, I thought was really, really slick. How they delivered that, even though it's not a long protracted battle by any means. But you know, Green Lantern versus Batman happens. I mean, and it was cool. So I can't imagine that this is going to do huge sales numbers. I mean, it's great that it has Batman in it. That's the only thing that's really going to save it in most people's eyes. If you're a diehard like me, you enjoy it for what it is, and you appreciate kind of Constantine's character, you know, and Zatanna, and you know, kind of all the rest of it. You know, Deadman looks like he's right out of the 70s, so I don't think he's really going to attract, you know, any big following, of course, by any means. Estrigan is kind of funny, you know, with his whole poetry and everything, that being the demon that Jason Blood turns into. So, yeah, just a good flick. I mean, just fun. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and I can think of a million ways that are far worse ways to spend an hour and 15 minutes. And if you're watching it on VLC and, you know, you put the slider up to 2X, well, fuck, you can watch it in 30 or, you know, 35 or 40. And then definitely, you know, as far as like just time alone, it makes a ton more sense. So not the best one in the DC animated universe, but a welcome addition. Like I think it was cool. I like getting these other characters. And if we could ever get, I mean, like the movies, I've watched all of them, all of the, you know, the newer DC animated movies. I've watched all the I've watched everything fucking animated DC pretty much, except for there's a couple like series that I didn't really watch. Justice League Unlimited. I didn't watch, there's that new one, Justice League Action or something. I haven't watched that, but I've watched so much DC animated. So anyway, point being, but out of the new ones, like you can see how the newer movies, like they are all part of an absolutely shared universe, and that each movie kind of interacts with each other. None of them, you don't have to watch. You can watch any of them in any order at any time, and you can totally, as long as you have a very basic knowledge, which I think is almost impossible not to have a basic knowledge about who Wonder Woman is, who Batman is, who Superman is, and all that. As long as you have a very basic knowledge of who the characters are, you can watch any of these movies at any given time in any order. I mean, some of the Batman movies, like there is kind of a trilogy of that, like Son of Batman, Red Hood, and all that. You know, those definitely have an order in which they get watched, but most of them you could just watch whenever, you know, and like there really is no special order to watch these things. And so, yeah, Justice League Dark, it was good. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was definitely very good. I loved seeing Zatanna even though I wasn't totally sold on the new take. I really dug seeing Zatanna, seeing Estrigan, kind of, that was funny for what it was. Having Swamp Thing kind of back in was interesting, even though they didn't go full on with the character. And Batman did a great job as always. It's Batman. You can pretty much do anything with Batman, and usually in some way, some form or fashion, it's enjoyable. So yeah, Justice League Dark. I mean, if I was going to give it, I think when the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I have done reviews of things, including we've been doing reviews of animated shows and whatever else. Usually we do like an A to F kind of rating. I'll give this a B. I think it deserves an absolute solid B, maybe even a B plus. Like it was, and largely not from the strength of all the characters involved, but I think the strength of the comedy, like it really, really works. Like, in fact, maybe I haven't laughed that hard at a movie since like maybe Nice Guys or The Force Awakens. And The Force Awakens was a damn funny movie. It really was. They did a great job with that. When Poe Dameron says, "We're going to do this," that was, or when he says like, it's like, all right, how's this going to work? Do you start talking? Do I start talking? That's some funny shit. So this movie, I mean, had me laughing out loud. Absolutely. So that easily earns it a B, but the characters were also good. I mean, everything worked. The action was good. You got to see some unique things, I think, and you got some interesting DC lore. I'll tell you, if Phantom Stranger was in it, and if they even just hinted at the origin of Phantom Stranger, I probably would have given it an A. It would have put that movie way over the top. But they dropped the ball by not having Phantom Stranger. That's really my only complaint with the film was not having Phantom Stranger in it. Because again, Jay Oliva did a great job. The score, the soundtrack was fantastic. The artistry obviously was, I mean, the way animation works now, I mean, you can almost dial it in. I mean, because you can almost phone it in. It's really that, it's just at that level to where it's just going to look good. You never really get bad animation anymore. So not saying that they don't work hard. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying that it's just so rare that you ever see such a thing as bad animation. I mean, when you look at like fan made things that are just stunning, sometimes better than even what the studios will come out with, there's really never an excuse to have bad animation anymore, and it just doesn't happen. So it becomes sort of an afterthought. It's like, well, how's the animation? And it's like, well, it was good. So you got to look at the other things. How was the direction of the animation? Jay Oliva did a great job. How's the soundtrack? How's the voice actors, which they were all phenomenal? How was all this? And it worked. It was good. So Justice League Dark, I give it a solid B, perhaps a B plus. And there you have it. And that's it. 37 minutes. Woo, there we go. I'm going to cut myself off before I get into some other subject. And I just keep on talking because, baby, like I always say, woo, if you cut me, I bleed comic book ink. And I have said that for years, and it's so true. Like, they are just so integral to my existence. Oh man. So boy, all right. No, I'm going to cut myself off. I just want to say there's some other great animation out there. I might end up reviewing. I won't review this on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, but I might end up talking about Voltron Season 2 or Voltron Legendary Defender Season 2. It is fucking great. Woo! It is so good. Holy shit. So, if that's all the review you need to go watch that, go fucking watch that. I don't care how you do it. Oh man, Legendary Defender is rocking ass. It is so good. So yeah, there we go. Anyway, enough. New Sex and Science Hour will be out this week. And of course, a Sovereign Tech episode on Saturday. 2 hours of pure gold from the excellence in podcasting, baby, the Golden Stallion. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.